What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Sales Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Lemon, and I've really flipped this whole sales culture channel into the space where I'm going to explore how sales and marketing tactics are reshaping the whole modern day workforce. And I'm doing this whole, work series, or future of work series, I should say, around this, all the different tech that's going on around it and how the space is evolving, from people working more remotely to just all the different flips and dynamics of politics with inside organizations, especially with the whole gig economy. I think this is going to really change how a lot of us operate and maneuver throughout our careers. If you think back in the day, whenever my parents were coming up, I think the average person had maybe about 3 to 5 jobs their whole career. So they would work a good 20, 30, maybe 40-year work span and only maybe change jobs 3-4 times. Now I saw a stat where the average person's going to change jobs every, I think it said between 11 to 15 different jobs they're going to have throughout their career. So times are changing, which is cool. And so if we think about that for 2 seconds, right? If people are changing jobs so much, how do you keep top talent, or how do you keep that team approach going for some periods of time? Or is that totally just thrown out the window? And then how do employers attract top talent, right? So not only do you have to worry about trying to figure out how do you keep them focused, engaged, wanting to stay with the organization, as well as, how do you bring on top players that are going to help you guys achieve whatever goals you guys have throughout the org. So, a lot of interesting conversations to have here. One of the things, selfish plug, that's what sales culture is about. It's really trying to figure out how you can brand your actual employer in a way that's attractive to people by sharing some of the authentic stories that are going on within your company. Because I think, with one of the best things about media right now is that it's so defragmented that everyone has a voice, right? And we have to mature to how that voice really sounds. So I think there's some growth that needs to happen from that front. But on the flip side, everyone has a voice, so now we can share the stories that weren't being told in the past. So I think podcast is a great way for that. That's what sales culture is all about. Go to salesculture.work, get some more details there. And so today's guest is going to be with Brian Griffin. Now, I first found this guy, ran across Brian whenever he was doing some of his IG stories, and he was just talking about the whole day in the life as a sports agent. And he was talking about how he drove out to places, 3-4 hour road trips so he can have a quick 20-minute conversation with some people's families. So he's really grinding. He's really getting off the ground, and it's just a really fun conversation to have with him as he shares just some of the backstories around how that industry really looks. Because, one thing that we see on SportsCenter is what the actual players get paid. They talk a little bit about what the owners make sometimes just from these organizations, but really there's a whole separate, just ecosystem around the athletes that falls outside of the actual court or off the field, and Brian takes part in a lot of that. So we dive into the weeds a little bit, talking about how people go about finding longevity in sports. You guys know that the average player's career in the NFL is only 2.7 years, so less than 3 years there. And what's next for these guys? And this is what some of the things that Brian really touches on. Talking about the teams that are more management driven versus player-centric. You see this a lot, especially in the NBA. Now, Brian only works with the NFL, so we didn't get too deep into the NBA topics, but still a lot of things that we uncovered, and especially the whole conversation I always love to have is whether players in college ought to get paid or not. So I think you guys will really enjoy this. We have a lot of fun talking about some of those interesting conversations. Brian keeps it all the way honest about how the industry really works. So if you ever have questions, if you're ever watching the movies and wonder, is that what's really going on? He's going to shed some light into that. And with that, I want a couple key announcements. One, want to make sure that you guys, or if you're in LA and you're going to be at the DigiMarcon conference, hit me up on Sales Culture, hit me up on LinkedIn, wherever you operate. I'll have all my ways that we can try to connect in the show notes. But I would love for you guys to come on out. I'll be the podcasting host there. So it's going to be on June 12th, 11th, and 13th. So if you're in LA, you're in Santa Monica, and you got some things to get off your chest, we'd love to have you on the show for that whole digital marketing conference. If you guys are there for that, that'd be great as well. All right, without any further hesitation, let's dive into today's show with Brian Griffin from the Ovation Management Group. Conversation, or are you trying to bring on a client? Like, what is it? What's the whole thought there?
I'm honest with everybody because my reputation is everything.
Yeah.
But to other people, their reputation is, hey, I bring in 30 players a year.
Gotcha.
And some of my 30 is going to be in the first round, second round.
Gotcha.
Or, you're going to see them every week. So, it's more of a numbers game.
Yeah.
It's a corporation instead of, relationships. And
almost like the whole VC type of startup type of mentality where they'll go invest in like 1,000 different companies and they only need 2 to pop.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's one of those type of setups.
Yeah.
It makes a lot more sense. That pretty much simplified the whole game for me right there.
Yeah.
And I mean, man, do you feel like times are changing? Do you feel like athletes are kind of saying, hold up, I don't want to just be with the number one guy that has 50 players under his belt? Like,
no.
You think?
Well, if I'm being straight, there's a lot of firms that are paying these guys to represent them, essentially. I mean, they find ways within the rules to do it, but, in all actuality, you're paying for representation.
Yeah.
And I treat this like a relationship. Like, I don't want my wife if she wants me just because I'm paying her.
Right.
So we focus on relationships.
That's a good move, man. I mean, man, I'm glad that you went there early. I mean, because that's the part I never forget watching. What's the name of it? Jesus Shuttlesworth. He's got game.
Yeah.
You remember that movie? Yeah. He's got game. And so they brought him out to the campus. Gave him this nice show. Took care of him. I mean, and I'm like, man, I was never that big of an athlete for people to start trying to pull out the stops for me. Like, I ain't get none of that. I got a letter. Like, hey, you want to come or not? This is up to you. And so like, so watching him go through that, I'm like, man, this is what's really happening. And it does happen for some guys, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
And it's just a part of kind of selling people, but they try to like bring on all the numbers, as you say.
Yeah. Just
like those top agents. And what's the name of the one lawyer that recently tried to beat up on Nike about that one deal? He was trying to hold Nike's guys accountable because they were like, yeah, man, Nike's out here paying athletes.
In basketball.
Yeah. In basketball. Yeah.
I know you're talking about.
Avenatti's, I forgot his name. Anyway, but we all know that stuff does exist, and there's some numbers and people are getting money from somewhere, but nobody wants to really talk about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of money moving around.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how much I can go into that, but
I mean, as much as you feel comfortable, I mean, I'm good to go. But as much as you feel comfortable, do whatever makes sense for you, man.
Yeah, So I'm only an agent in football.
Yeah.
But obviously we're arm's length away from basketball. But there's money moving around in football, and it's not generating as much money. Mm-hmm. And we could just leave that there.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Talking about money, man, what's your whole thoughts on players getting paid in college?
I believe they should get paid.
Yeah.
I mean, in so many words, they're high-level employees for the university. They generate a lot of money.
100%.
So, I mean, and once you're talking about coaches getting paid millions of dollars per year.
It's kind of wild, isn't it?
Oh, my God.
I mean, I'm just talking about the whole separation. One person gets, all right, $50K a year if you're going to like a top level program. Right. USC is like $60,000 a year. So their athletes are kind of making, all right, that's nice. I mean, don't get me wrong. That's definitely good. But every time I talk to the athletes that are at these programs, it's like what they're doing and knowing that they don't have a life. Mm-hmm. I mean, because I remember being in college, athletes they're busy from 6 a.m. to almost at 9 or something like that,
Yeah, man. It's tough. So I played football in college in South Dakota.
Yep.
And, 5:30 in the morning till at least 10 o'clock at night because you got to do film before our film study in the morning. We'll work out, film. You have your 8 o'clock classes because you need to be done by 3.
Yeah.
Actually, you need to be done by like 2:30 because you got to do special teams. So, man, it's tough.
How was the whole process like, hindsight?
I I think, I don't know. I really respect my experience in college because, you know, I went so far away from home. I grew up in Florida, went to school in South Dakota. So it exposed me to a lot of life. I was forced to grow up. And, I mean, I got in touch with the right people at the right time, and now I saw the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And now I'm able to, you know, show that big picture to other athletes now. So it worked for me.
Really cool, man. I mean, and so back home in Florida, because you're from Jacksonville, right? Jacksonville's different too, man.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a good city, but man, it's like every time I go to downtown Jacksonville, it's like you pull from every walk of life, man.
Yeah, it's tough.
Right there, like in that little Riverwalk area,
yeah,
or whatever it's called. I forgot the name of it actually, but yeah, I mean, I got one story, and I remember being in Jacksonville, and I was there for some conference or whatever they had right there at the Hilton or whatever that main building is, right there off the strip. So we went down to like the little tourist trap area. There was some live music playing. It was a black rock band, which is weird. I was like, all right, cool, black rock, all right, something different. And then everyone that was in the crowd was like, it was the extremes.
Right.
It was like the extremes of the extremes. And there was this guy that was carrying this other guy like a baby.
Oh, God.
I mean, man, because they've been drinking too much. It was obvious.
Oh, you was over by the landing then.
By the landing.
Yeah.
You already know the area.
Yeah.
And, man, he dropped him on his head, man.
Oh, God.
I looked over and heard, like, just a thump. I was like, oh, my goodness. Yo, this is Jacksonville, yo.
Yeah, that's Jacksonville.
But it's cool, though.
Yeah.
Man?
Yeah.
How's the whole transition as you're kind of moving around? Like, I mean, has it been pretty easy for you to kind of navigate the whole movement?
Yeah. I mean, Jacksonville's obviously big. So going to South Dakota was obviously a culture shock there, and the weather is a lot different than Florida. But I knew I wanted to be somewhere that's in between. And, I mean, my roommate from my freshman year in South Dakota was from here.
Okay.
So came out on the spring break and just fell in love with it, decided this is where I was going to be.
Do you have a lot of athletes in this area? Are there guys that actually live here?
Yeah. So one of my clients is out here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I would imagine that they're starting to bring on more and more people with the whole, you know, green rush and everything else like that. People trying to start businesses. I know there's, and I mean, like really, it's crazy just kind of learning about how lucrative that business is really becoming. You know, as people are really getting into it. Do you have a lot of athletes? Not talking about that part of the business. I don't want to get anybody in trouble here. But I mean, as far as like athletes that are really pressing into trying to be entrepreneurs, are you guys helping them out with that whole piece of the life as well, or do you guys just mainly try to stick to, you know, lots of actual contracts on the field?
No. So we do what I consider like holistic representation.
Okay.
It's all about life after football.
Yeah.
I guess just to go off track for a second, one of the toughest things for me was to figure out who I was outside of sports.
Yeah.
So that transition process is something we address day one. The day you get on paper, we start talking about, hey, like, who are you? Who is Brian? If it's not for your jersey. And for me, you know, I live to give back. So whatever it is that players want to do, we open that window for them. Our company does what's called we do a business summit.
Okay.
And we look to do it in every one of their hometowns.
Really?
So we teach about credit, financial literacy. Like, I mean, if you want to be an entrepreneur, start whatever it is that you want to do, that's our way of giving back through our athletes.
Isn't it a shame that they don't talk about those basic things about credit?
Man.
And I mean, like just the basics around credit, even though most of our country runs on debt and like credit, right? I mean,
absolutely.
I mean, but it's not talked about I mean, I think you could bring it up in like elementary school, 4th, 5th grade. You could start the conversation. I feel like, but it's passed through, and it's not even touched in college.
No, not at all.
You know. I mean, so I think that's a really good point that like you guys are actually bringing that up to people, because I'd imagine a lot of guys have a culture shock.
Yeah.
Whenever if you play ball and all you know is ball, and you've been dominant at it, so you can rise to the ranks, you had to be dominant on like every level that you're playing just to even get to the pros. And so then you kind of take yourself out of that. Then it's like there's a whole, I mean, you've been so niched down and like narrow focus because you had to be.
Right.
Then the world opens up to you, or the rest of the world opens up to you, and it's like, where do we go from here type of setup, right?
Right.
Man, so how are players kind of taking on lots of that actual feedback from you? Is it a pretty open conversation, or are like guys kind of looking for, you know, gravitating almost towards you for that type of guidance?
Yeah. Well, I would say in the recruiting process is sometimes it's hard to even get to that level because
Really?
I haven't been around for a long time. I don't have 30 years behind me, so me just walking in the room is like, hey, my name is Brian Griffin. It's like, all right, brother, well, who are you? And I'm not one of those guys that recruit based on who I have on my client roster already.
Yeah.
Because if this doesn't work, this just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But once we, get past the, breaking the ice or whatever, and we have some trust, yeah, we do talk about that. And some people are receptive to it, some aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And we just look for guys that are.
Man, how I was about to ask you a question, but I had to stop right there because I'm really glad that you said that, because you guys aren't just down to work with everybody. It sounds like you want to find the right fits.
Yeah.
Which I firmly believe is the best way to kind of roll in business. You don't try to sell people on ideas that they don't want to buy into.
Right.
You just let them kind of, all right, that's not my client. So that's really cool that you guys are doing that whole route. How long have you been being an actual agent now? So how many years has it been?
2 years officially.
Okay.
Been in and around the business for 5 now.
Nice.
4 or 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the hardest part about getting out the ground?
Getting through bad information, or when I say it's a lot of people paying, or there's just a lot of loose ethics, I'll say.
Yeah.
And that's just me speaking honestly about it. It's also tough, me being a black man. I'm only 28. I turned 29 in a month now.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Walking up to parents that's like early 50s or whatever, say, I'm 29 years old. I'm an agent. This is, my track history. This is my why.
Yeah.
It's tough for some people to get through that, but yeah, that and like the travel. I mean, for example, last season I drove 6 hours to see a kid, talked to him for maybe 5-10 minutes afterwards.
Yeah.
And had to get back on the road. So, man, I had 12 hours of driving one day to talk for 5 minutes. Granted, I got to talk to the family for a little bit before that, but,
Yeah. Dedication.
Yeah. That's what you got to do. It's tough, but it's worth it.
Man, how are some of the big guys doing it? Whenever they go about doing how they do, do they kind of flex the extra Rolodex? Is that how they get into the doors in a lot of places? Or
some people, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know how. I don't want to put a target on my back next
year.
No,
man, don't.
Yeah,
I'll go ahead and cut you off right there, man. So we can move to the next topic, man. But I think your actual eyes said plenty, man. Lots of actual conversations around that. But have you seen this actual movie called? It's on Netflix called High Flying Bird.
No,
man. So it's cool. I think you might like it. It's not that it's not like acting's okay. But the actual concept of that movie is really interesting to me. It's about this first-round draft pick NBA guy that just got inked, and then basketball movie.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
All right, cool. I mean, that whole idea of them challenging the whole system a little bit.
Yeah,
where they're kind of like, all right, look, you're the actual talent here.
Right.
Without the actual top players, it's kind of like, what do we got?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
What's your whole idea of that whole concept, man? I mean,
I love the idea of it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I would love to see something that can challenge the NCAA.
Sure.
So when I was saying that, that's where my bigger picture was coming from. It's like, if you had enough athletes that would stand up to the NCAA and it's like, hey, we're not going to do this. This is our league. So, like, if the AAF was for fresh out of high school guys that don't need to be in college, absolutely. I would love to see a system that challenges the NCAA. You're not going to challenge the NFL because, I mean, it's like a minor league trying to compete with MLB. It's impossible. Right.
That's a great point. I didn't even think about that, though, man. Like, having a system for high schoolers to kind of be a part of.
Yeah, especially for basketball now that, they're able to talk to agents, in high school now.
Can they?
Yeah, you can get advice.
I didn't know that.
They just changed that rule, yeah.
Oh, wow, all right.
Yeah.
I mean, man, because like to me, like that's one of the big giants that I think people are trying to chip away at. Like this whole conversation about athletes getting paid, and it's still interesting to me too, because my whole personal thoughts on it is I believe athletes should get paid. I don't understand how you can get a head coach making like $10 million, his assistants making 6 figures, whatever they're doing,
right?
And then all the guys that are out there busting the butt, trying to win the games for the actual for the brand. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, they don't get anything. I'm not saying you got to cut them a major check, but I don't get how you don't get a decent livable type of stipend. I mean, I don't think it has to go crazy, but a stipend seems like a minimum. But there's other guys, agents as well, that are like, man, no, they got a free ride. And they're like,
that's not even true most of the time.
True.
Think about how many players walk on to their sport that get nothing. They're actually paying to be in this program.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Their hours are the same as everybody else, if not a little bit longer, because, I mean, as a walk-on, you're a glorified practice dummy until you prove that, hey, I mean, I can actually do this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, think about how I put it this way. The school pretty much owns them. So, like, let's say they want to transfer for whatever reason. Let's say, I have a sickness in my family and I have to move back home now.
Right.
Like, you may have to sit out, like, for your sport for a year. So you got to find a school that likes you that much that's going to let you come. But if a coach wants to transfer and upgrade his job, you could, you're coaching right now. Bring your coaching staff with you. We want you.
Mid-season, right?
Yeah.
I mean, most of them doesn't happen mid-season, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It can happen almost at any given moment.
Yeah. And these players, I mean, a lot of them come from struggling backgrounds.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think that also plays into why a lot of athletes take bribes to sign with agents. Because, I mean, that's just the writing on the wall. Let's be honest about it. Yeah. I mean, I did a paper in law school about different ways you can pay athletes. So just the TV money from March Madness, you can pay every athlete, I think it was like $5,000 or $10,000 per semester.
Wow.
For like 5 years out. Now it's just a basketball TV contract.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand. Actually, I can't understand amateurism because that's a lie. The legal history of amateurism is a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to see him get paid.
Yeah, man. I mean, unfortunately, I feel like it's much easier for them to do it in basketball than it is in football. I thought just because of the pure numbers,
Yeah.
But even if it's a slice, like I'm one of those guys that believes that compound it. Let us get like a little piece, then we can come back to the table next year and then we can try to restructure things. But I know there's people that want the big checks, but like something, right? It makes too much not to do something.
Right.
Have you seen it? Have you seen any guys that? I mean, and I'm asking just because I'm curious about this at all. I'm not. I haven't seen it done, but do you know any guys that were able to kind of almost sit out after like a certain point in like college and then come back to the pros and actually have an actual impact in football?
No.
You almost got to work. You almost got to walk that line, don't you? I mean, you have to kind of go through that system.
Yeah. It's tough. I mean, I'll say Bosa this year. I mean, with him, he had his injury or whatever, and just decided, hey, I'm getting ready for the NFL.
Right.
I mean, there's not many guys that can do that.
Yeah.
But obviously, his brother's done very well in the league, and I mean, he's going to be a top 3 pick.
How do you feel about guys doing that? Guys just taking not playing in the whole bowl game because what's the one linebacker from Notre Dame, the one guy that got hurt during the actual bowl game, and then he was out for almost 2 years trying to rehab.
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely side with players for protecting themselves in their best interest. Yeah. Because, I mean, to be honest, we talk to these guys before they even play in this game. I mean, when bowl season is here, that's our prime signing period. So we've already had our conversations about, hey, like, what do you really want to do? Yeah. Because, I mean, it's the same as talking to a junior about coming back for a senior year. It's like, this is where you are now. This is what could potentially happen. The choice is yours. And for most players, unless you're playing for a national championship, it just don't make sense.
To actually come back and actually do that senior year.
Well, no, to play in your bowl game.
I got you. I'm with you.
Like, regardless of what year it is, I mean, if you're like a freshman, sophomore, I mean, that could potentially affect, next year. Right. Because, I mean, you're freshman, sophomore, you have to come back next year. Right. But if you're a junior and you're projected first, second round, an injury could hurt that a lot.
Oh, man. I mean, it's like mad risky, man. You hear a lot of people, down people on these different type of sports talk radio shows. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I'm really into doing the whole podcasting thing because you get to have both sides of the conversation. Right. You know, and this is why, you know, even once we were kind of chopping it up not too long, well, over the phone, you were kind of talking about how maybe you might get into podcasts, and I highly encourage you to think about doing it, because it's great to have both sides of the story.
Right.
If you have only one voice coming from ESPN, they work with the NFL. I mean,
Right.
that whole system. Don't get me wrong, it's cool. People try to bring some different thoughts, but nobody's really speaking that heavily right from the player's mouth, man.
Right.
And how it is to be at home for 2 years trying to rehab, not sure if you're going to ever play again, and then you got to figure out life afterwards. And, you know, that whole life of being like a straight free agent is crazy. It is so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, matter of fact, are you working with any type of free agents right now?
Yeah. I have one now. He's just
talk about the struggle a little bit for that. I mean, if you don't mind.
In free agency, if you're not a big name, I mean, it's tough. I ain't gonna lie to you. It's tough because you have to. Well, at least where we stand at, I don't want to put you in a system that you're not gonna make a roster. Yeah. And just because you've been around for 2 years, 3 years, whatever, don't mean that you're just gonna walk in somebody's system and make it. Yeah. Like, as good as even Von Miller is, like, I'm sure there's some systems that he may not work in. Sure. So you can't just look at it. It's like, okay, Team X needs this position. Like, of course, we're going to send our player there. Of course not. He may not make the roster. Yeah. And then we've wasted time and our resources, really. It don't make sense. We probably burn a bridge in that process.
Makes sense, man. I mean, so I want to ask some really dumb questions here because I'm not really sure of this process that much. So whenever you talk about they might get cut, so even if the team calls them up and say, hey, I would love to talk to your player about joining the squad, like there's an opportunity for them not to make the actual cut, and then if they don't make the cut, is there other opportunities with like other teams, or do you kind of close the door after that process?
So I guess right now, so if a team were to bring in any player, one, they're going to do like a brief workout. Yep. Obviously like interview and whatnot, and they have to pass the physical. Yep. So if, let's say the workout doesn't go well or they can't pass the physical, that team can decide not to bring them in. Any other team can decide to bring them in or not. Let's say, so training camp's right around the corner. Yep. So let's say players brought into training camp and he just doesn't fit the system. Mm-hmm. They cut him, or they cut him any time before the preseason. Of course, any time during the season, another team can bring him in, but nothing's guaranteed.
It's probably a lot harder too. I mean, after guys are already starting to fill those slots on those, on the roster already. Yeah,
especially if you've been in the league for a while. Let's say you don't have a whole lot of production. Mm-hmm. Teams think about things in terms of money. Like they're running businesses. Yeah. So if I can get cheaper labor, that can do essentially what you do, or I can train him to do what you do. I mean, business. Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, man. So how do you market someone that's in like free agency? Like, are you guys calling up to like teams? I'm just asking now because I'm just curious about the process, because there's probably so many guys in the league that are trying to find their spots on rosters. Is there anything that agents could do to help get them more recognition? Yeah, by like teams. Yeah, scouts are our best friends. Okay. I mean,
you guys are with scouts all the time then.
Yeah, if it wasn't for scouts, I would. Of course, we'd have an idea of who we should go after based on whose name is getting screamed every Saturday or whatever. Yep. But at the end of the day, scouts have direct access to a draft pick. So I'm not leaning on my own judgment. So of course you lean on your scouts and say, hey, have player X. I mean, where do you see him in your system? And obviously you sell him on his strengths, and you talk around weaknesses.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Well, that makes a lot more sense, man, because, a lot of times I'm thinking as we're getting more tech savvy, but it's still kind of a lot of those same systems. Yeah. Of you're still trusting someone's gut to be like, hey, this guy's got it or he doesn't got it. This guy's going to be a fit. And then the people that are within that guy's network are the people that kind of get, top of mind, basically. Right.
Right. That's the draft process. Yeah. Like, obviously – so there's like tiers of scouts. So you have like your area scouts, you have like your, like your pro personnel, the ones who actually have access to the draft pick. Yep. So like our scouts at a ground level advocate up, and personnel are the ones that make these draft picks. So, yeah, make friends, and make sure you have the right guys, and they're the ones that make sure you have the right guys.
Man, I really feel like this is because I was talking to previous guy right before you kind of came in, and he works for a lot of teams, but more so on the sports medicine side.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just saying how it's just like everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
Every time I go to a team and I start name dropping or I might mention somebody,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I mean, everybody knows, everybody has access to everybody.
Right.
It's a small group of people,
Yeah.
I feel like. And so if you're in that, then you're always there. But
Yeah.
I feel like if you fall outside of that for whatever reason,
Yeah.
politics, blacklisted, whatever happens there,
Right.
then it's probably really difficult trying to get back into that type of in that circle, man. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of interesting just kind of hearing how things play out from the inside, you know?
Yeah, that's probably the toughest thing it is for us in recruiting to get it across to like families. Like it's like Big Agent X has to have all these, contacts that nobody else can get. It's like with the right player, like right now, if I had represented Bosa this year, it's not a contact in this league that I couldn't get.
100%.
But players and families don't see that. They just see like the glamour of last year.
Yeah.
And, every player is different. Like no player on my client roster is going to be the same as you.
Yeah.
So every presentation we give, anytime I'm talking to players, it's always different because your situation is different. You're coming into this world different. I can have the top receiver this year, and I represent, let's say, Odell.
Yeah.
Odell's story is a lot different than, the top receiver this year.
Yeah.
Whoever that may be.
Sure.
So, I mean, players just fall for that kind of stuff, though.
Man, that's why you got to start a podcast, man.
Right.
I mean, because I think families, and I'm not trying to put it all on the players, because I think the families got to be more educated as well, right? I mean, a lot of times these guys, I mean, it's funny. Whenever I go to these locker rooms, I'm like 35 now, and I feel like an old head. I mean, like, these guys, 18.
Yeah.
I mean, another 3 times my size. You know what I mean? I mean, so these guys are straight monsters. But when it comes to it, these guys are kids, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, are they just graduated high school? Are they, 2 years out? And I remember how it was to be 19, 20, even 22. I mean, you're still trying to get your arms around life for the most part.
Right.
I mean, so and then have so much attention.
Yeah.
And people don't really, most people can't even comprehend what that type of, you know what I mean? Like,
it's different.
Access is like to your life.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I think families got to kind of get caught up to speed too, because they got to be in this process too with them.
Yeah, you speak my language. That's our recruiting process. It's tough trying to speak something different than, let's say, other agents, because, I mean, we focus on the relationship. Yeah. And in that relationship, we're trying to educate you about this full system, like this very real, we were talking about it earlier, 2.7 years that you could potentially have in the league. Every player wants to play for 10 years and be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Of course.
That doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. So, I mean,
I got some thoughts around that too, man. I mean, now that we're just kind of wrapping here, man. It's like, I think that because so many people watch ESPN and they show the highlight reel of Odell nonstop. I mean, who knows how many times they talk about that guy every week. Right. You know what I mean? Like, but they don't talk about the other 3,000 players in the league. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Or I'm not even sure how many there are, but let's just call it. You know what I mean? Hundreds of players throughout the league, and the guys that are like free agents, right? And so they hear this, and that's the story that they buy into for themselves. All the families buy into for their sons or their daughters. You know what I mean? Right. And they're like, all right, my son's going to be like this. And it's like this whole idea of losing touch with humanity, really. Right. It's like people don't want to sit down and just have conversations anymore. Right. People want to fast track it. People got some, backdoor type of motives. Right. Or there's something else going on, and they want to kind of get to that fast buck or whatever it may be. Right. And they don't want to go through the growth process of just putting in the work day in, day out. And that's what really I feel like is the ultimate wins. Like, look, anybody that I feel like is super on top of it, constantly, going through like this whole winning process, is because they're putting in the work day in, day out. Yeah. And it's not like this one big, lottery pick that they got. you know?
Right. Yeah. Those are guys we ultimately look to sign.
Yeah.
Guys that, they get the bigger picture.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll brag on one of my guys now. So I have a guy in this draft right now, and I'm more excited about who he's going to be outside of football than like who he is as a player, because he just gets it.
That's dope.
And not everybody sees the bigger picture.
Yeah.
His family got it. I mean, his dad played in the league for several years. His brother's been in the league for several years. So talking to him, the conversation was just different. And that was the first time, like, I just laughed the first time I met him because, like, bro, like, you just get it.
Yeah. He was raised in it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if his pops played, then I'm sure his pops kind of blazed the way a little bit for at least that educational process.
Right.
You know, genes too, I'm sure. But still, at least in the understanding of how this business operates. And that's what I think a lot of people don't have.
Absolutely.
You know, a lot of people don't have that person that's been there to give them some wisdom.
Yeah.
Of like, this was really going on behind the scene.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Recruiting him is funny because I didn't have to waste so much time breaking the barrier of, hey, this is good information. This was probably bad information.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is what the draft process really looks like. Yeah. To date, I'm so stoked for him. Like,
that's awesome, man. I mean, man, you know, it's funny how the right people kind of click easy in business, and a lot of times we get stuck trying to, at least I do, trying to pull teeth, and I'm like, oh man, I'm pulling teeth. I got to stop.
Right.
you know, like, I'm working uphill here. This is way too hard. I have to get off this train. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you know, so talk a little bit about what some of those options are for some of your players outside of the league. You know, because once you say that you're going to be happy for them and you're proud of where they're looking, like, what are some of those conversations like, and what's some of the maybe some of those journeys that those guys are going on out after the league?
Right. Well, I would say after the league, the biggest adjustment is just being a regular person.
Yeah.
Like, from all that fame, like, so Michael Phelps talked a lot about it when he finally retired from swimming.
Yeah.
It's like, I went from, like, this top dog, you know, gold medal winning swimmer to, like, everyday person. That messes with your head a little bit. So, I don't know. I guess that also goes back to just recruiting the right people. I also make sure I recruit people that don't think too much of themselves. So, like, even like myself, like, I'm not, like, there by any means, but I don't know. You got to stay centered. You got to stay grounded. So that's probably the toughest part about, you know, transitioning. But as far as options off the field, you know, players can really do anything. I encourage them to get into real estate, learn how to invest without using a financial advisor. I mean, of course, like, have your backup safety net, whatever you will, but there's so much free education out here, or, like, people that's doing it.
Yeah.
That, I mean, you don't have to pay somebody a whole lot of money to learn how to invest in real estate. So, I mean, that's one thing I've taught myself. We preach at our firm that, you know, you want to make more money off the field than on the field.
Right. Because
you need something that's sustainable off the field, because 2.7 years. So if you don't have something set up for that.
That's a great point, man. You know, just talking about investing, how do you block a lot of these sharks coming at your players, man? I mean, because I'd imagine there's people that are like, oh, he's going to the league, and you know how it is when if you're a superstar in high school. I mean, you're probably a crazy superstar if you're going to the league, and so hometown loves you, or they have this image that they love you. College, people love you back at that college, and then you get to the pros, and all of these people that have been following you throughout this journey, and you got some sharks in there as well.
Oh yeah.
I mean, how do you kind of block those guys from kind of getting at your players, man?
We change all their numbers. Yeah, I mean,
that's
but
a good
really
point.
though, right after the draft is over,
Yep.
they're in training camp. We change everybody's numbers, so that way we don't have random people hitting them up. Because you acquire a lot of family members and old friends that, do you remember this time? That comes out, and it's like, no, I'd rather you have my number than our client's number, because they need to focus on playing football.
That's a good point, man. You know, and that's got to be the toughest people to actually turn down is the family. I mean, from the player standpoint.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, that's why I'm the no man.
Right.
Right.
So everybody needs to go through you moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, like, be yourself, talk to your closest family. Whoever has your number is going to be because you personally gave it to them, and obviously team personnel.
Yeah.
But outside of that, no.
Man, you know, it was crazy just thinking about how Nipsey Hussle got, like, killed earlier this week, man.
Right.
And it's like, you know, he was home, though. Like, he was
Man.
in front of his store, bro. I mean,
Right.
like, that I don't really get rocked a lot when people pass. I mean, not saying, you know, I'm cold-hearted, but, you know, things happen.
Right.
But that one kind of got me, though, man.
For real.
You know? I mean, especially how it happened. It even got me more.
Yeah.
You know, I could imagine, like, the athletes kind of go home and there's that type of energy, unfortunately, around them, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's got to be tough, man. Are you a fan of Nipsey at all?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right,
yeah.
cool.
Man, I love Nip. Yeah.
he had like a crazy message though, man. I got into his because I'm from the East Coast. I wasn't really into his music until I came out to the West like 2 years ago, and I got into like mailbox money because they were playing at the barbershop, and I was like, this is like I got into it 2 years ago, so I was like, I think it came out 2013, 14, something like that.
Yeah.
And so I was mad late to the game. But it's like the stuff he was talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, track after track after track. I was like, whoa, this is.
Yeah.
People weren't thinking like that.
No. That's go back to our why and our agency. It's like, I'm here to give. And I mean, for a person that gave so much free game.
Yeah.
It's sad to see him go like that.
It was free, man.
Yeah.
I mean, stream, but it's free.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's wild, man.
Yeah.
So Brian, we are about to wrap it up, man. I want you to kind of plug your agency, plug your why, if you don't mind, and then plug how people can kind of find you online.
All right. Well, my personal why is, painting a bigger picture, changing communities through athletes. That's my why. One thing I learned in college is, with me studying money or finance, people would do so much better had they been educated on it. So I live to give away all that for free. Kind of like what Nip is doing. Like, I'm not nearly where Nip is at, but one day Ovation Management is going to be known for putting people on, our clients and their communities. I guess what's next for us is, we're just looking for the right guys.
Yeah.
Guys who align with that. Guys who, see a bigger picture in life for them and their families, leaving legacy. As far as my social media, Brian Griffin _3. Not really on Twitter. I have a Twitter. Obviously, you follow the news, but I don't post anything on it.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, man, I think what you guys are doing is major, and I think the fact that so many people were impacted by Nipsey's passing, man, I think that's a sign that people were trying to actually get to this level.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, people are like looking like, oh yeah, I mean, it was starting to resonate. As long as we don't let it lose steam, I think it's moving in the right direction, man. So I think you'll have some pretty good prospects looking your way, man, because I don't know how, if you understand what's happening, how you don't at least kind of want to learn more about that process.
Right.
So, Brian, appreciate you coming on the podcast, man. Thank you for traveling across town, jumping on the microphones, man. And, dude, definitely enjoyed having you.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir.
So like that, it's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Sales Culture Podcast. Please subscribe to the other channels, the Joe Lemon Experience as well. I'm getting a little bit more, getting my hands dirty, getting back into the healthcare and health and wellness conversations. It's just something I really care about. I can't leave it alone. But you know what? If you're interested in learning more about sales culture, please go to salesculture.work. I think there's a lot of interesting things happening in the future of workspace. And if you have any meaningful thoughts around that, I would love to have you on the show. Just please reach out to me either on LinkedIn or catch me on any of the major platforms at Joe Alex Lemon. Until next time, you guys be phenomenal.